The Blacksmith's Forge, by Stephen Lake. Vagil, master blacksmith for the King of Thorn, toiled in his shop one afternoon on a special project for the chief of the guard. The old knight had brought an ancient magical spear to him that was in desperate need of repair, one that he hoped could be used to finally destroy, once and for all, the great Shire Dragon of Gully Point. Vagil grinned happily as he beat diligently on the damaged spearhead, his hammer working expertly with the magical steel to undo all of the damage that had been inflicted on it through centuries of constant use. He wasn't sure if just one magical spear could turn the tide of a centuries-old quest to destroy the Shire Dragon. But, if it would help, he would gladly do his best to ensure that it was fully restored. Especially since, for the past 200 years, not a single one of the kingdom's knights had succeeded in defeating the great fiery lizard. Instead, they'd often become its lunch. Because of this, it was quite common for the army to lose no less than 2 to 3 men on every attempt. On really bad days they would lose as many as 6. That is why the chief of the guard wanted this spear repaired, as he hoped it would finally put an end to their fruitless and vain efforts to destroy the dragon. As he pondered this, Vagil continued to beat on the spearhead with skill and determination as he worked to straighten out its bends, smooth out its nicks, and hammer out its many chips and dents in hopes of restoring it back to fighting condition. The spear itself had already been through a lot, and really needed to be retired to the scrap heap rather than restored. But that would not be its fate today. This is because it was believed to be the only weapon on the entire continent capable of killing the dragon. As such, if it couldn't be repaired, then he'd need to pick up some more steel in the morning, as the army would almost certainly be needing a few new sets of armor very soon. As he worked, he sprinkled a special gray powder onto the spearhead, which he took out of a small leather pouch next to his anvil, and hammered it in. He wasn't certain why he needed to do this. But, if the chief of the guard told him to do so, he would. At one point during the day, he accidentally bumped the bag of powder, causing some of it to spill out onto the floor. Not thinking anything of it, he set the bag upright and continued his work, pounding, heating, and slowly reforging the old spearhead. This work continued on all day, and long into the night, until it became too dark and too late to continue on. Having reached the end of the workday, he set the spearhead aside and then swept the shop as he always did before turning in for the night. He then took all of the gathered metal shavings, dust, ash, scrap metal and other debris and dumped it into a bucket in the corner. He'd wait until morning to throw that out, along with the prior day's ashes, as it was best to do so during the daylight. He then closed down the forge and left for the night. But, unbeknownst to him, by spilling the bag of magic powder on the floor, he'd set in motion a series of events that would ultimately bring about the protection of many. As the moon climbed high into the nighttime sky, a long, dark shadow appeared in the city, its inky blackness completely quenching the brilliant twilight that covered the land. The shadow slithered silently down the city's main street and made a beeline towards the blacksmith's shop as though drawn by powerful, irresistible forces. Upon arriving there, it lifted itself up onto the rear window of the shop and peered inside. It soon spotted, over next to the now rapidly cooling forge, the still wounded and scarred spearhead. It was already looking quite a bit better than it had earlier in the day. But it was still in need of considerable repair if it was ever to have any hope of fighting again, and defeating the great Shire Dragon. The shadow grinned with evil, greedy delight at this. Just then, a single, green eye appeared on the face of the spearhead and began frantically scanning the room. It could sense that a great evil was nearby, but couldn't see what it was. It soon spotted a patch of blackness, darker than midnight, peering through the window at it. 2 red dots then appeared within the blackness, accompanied by a fiery, toothy mouth full of blood-red teeth that grinned at the spearhead with demonic, lustful glee. The spearhead blinked and shivered in fear at this. The patch of blackness staring back at it was known as a night wraith, a magical creature of unspeakable evil and power. But, despite how powerful a night wraith might become, it always wanted more. Its hunger for power was unquenchable. Even infinite power wouldn't be enough to satisfy its hunger. And the spearhead feared that it was about to become the wraith's next meal, as night wraiths love to consume anything magical or enchanted in order to increase their power. The night wraith soon retreated from the window, and slowly made its way around the building to the front door like a black fog. This made the spearhead want to scream, to cry out for assistance. But it had no mouth, and no voice with which to do so. And, even if it did, its call would have been in vain, for only another creature of equal magical power could destroy or defeat a night wraith. And, once the wraith had consumed the spearhead, its power would grow even stronger. It was already nearly unstoppable. Consuming the spearhead would only make it even more so. It quickly made its way to the front door of the shop and flowed under it like water, where it slowly gathered itself together into a pool on the other side. Fear now turned into terror as the spearhead found itself unable to flee, or do anything but watch, and wait for what would almost certainly be its doom. The night wraith soon reformed itself, rising up from the floor to become a tall column of darkness filled with greed and evil lust. It then stood there for several moments as it studied its prey while licking its black lips with hungry anticipation of its soon-to-be meal. The wraith soon changed again in appearance, its thick, inky blackness giving way to a human form shrouded in darkness. It then glided over to the spearhead and reached out for it as it cackled gleefully to itself. But, just as it did, out of a small bucket in a corner of the shop, a silver and black-colored form erupted into the room as its tentacles lashed out at the wraith with angry fury. With a quick swing and a jab, the creature sliced off the hand of the wraith, and then drove a piercing blow into its side before retreating to cover. The wraith cried out in pain, and quickly retreated back to the door where it immediately dissolved into an inky black smoke as it searched the room frantically for signs of what had attacked it. A moment later, the hand that had been lopped off liquefied and flowed back to the wraith, quickly rejoining with its body once more. The creature that had attacked the wraith soon transformed into a metallic cat, and then leapt on top of the anvil. The spearhead looked up in surprise at the creature as it hissed angrily at the wraith. But this wasn't just any piece of enchanted metal. It was a creature born from the very magic dust that the blacksmith had been using to heal the spearhead. The magic dust had somehow empowered the metal scraps that had been left by the blacksmith's forging, and given them life. The wraith studied the creature with dark, malevolent interest as the magical, metallic cat directed a twangy, grating hiss at the wraith. It was at that moment that the spearhead noticed a small leather bag on the creature's back. It was the magic powder. The wraith then watched in surprise as the creature picked up the spearhead, leapt across the room, and then alighted next to the marred and damaged metal shaft of the enchanted spear. The creature then took the bag of magical powder off its back, poured it down the hollow shaft of the spear, and immediately placed the spearhead on top. It then hungrily scraped the pouch of every last ounce of powder inside, before throwing it into the smoldering fire of the forge. When it erupted into a plume of sparkling green smoke, the wraith immediately realized the immense magical power it had just allowed to escape. Infuriated, the wraith leapt at the creature, but missed, as the creature quickly retreated into the rafters. The wraith flowed after it in hot pursuit, but was forced to retreat when the metallic creature struck out and once more wounded it. The wraith again withdrew across the room where it paused to look after its injuries. How could a little magical creature like this wound it so easily? Was it now more powerful than the wraith itself? After a few moments the wraith leapt up into the rafters again and gave chase, winding itself back and forth through them in hot pursuit of the metallic creature. Seeing that the wraith was thoroughly entangled within the rafters, the metallic creature bounded to the floor and then scurried over to a corner where it laughed the wraith to scorn. Growing more furious by the moment, the wraith changed its form and splashed to the floor like water before quickly retaking its human form. The metal creature hissed angrily as the wraith rushed at it and pinned it to the wall before it could scurry to safety. The wraith then drew the creature to its face, and grinned with evil satisfaction. It would now consume the magic that empowered the creature, and once more feed its endless hunger. But, just as the wraith opened its mouth to consume its latest victim, a powerful, burning pain pierced its side and drove hard through its body. The wraith immediately let out a powerful, tormented scream of agony and dropped the little, metallic creature. The wraith then looked down in horror to see the now fully healed spear lance through its body. The spear, in turn, looked over at the metallic creature and smiled with gratitude. The metallic creature looked at the spear in amazement and shouted with joy. The spear withdrew itself from the wraith's body moments later and began dancing around in the air with anticipation. The wraith quickly retreated several steps away as a fire-red ooze gushed generously from its side. As it swabbed at the wound, it didn't understand how anything, especially an enchanted human weapon, could wound it so deeply. Then again, it didn't know how the little metallic creature had done the same thing either. This was a complete and total mystery to it. And then it remembered the pouch, and the strange gray powder it contained. Suddenly a cold fear flooded the wraith's mind. The power in the bag must have been of a special kind designed to destroy enchanted creatures like itself. It then studied the spear, and the metal creature, and saw the murder in both of their eyes. Realizing that its life was in danger, the wraith immediately turned and raced for the door. But the metallic creature would not allow it to escape. It quickly caught the wraith, and then pinned it to the floor, preventing it from escaping. Not wanting to waste this opportunity, the spear immediately plunged its metal head through the wraith's smoke-like body, causing the wraith to scream in agony as flames gushed from its wounds. Over and over again the spear pierced the wraith, each time causing the wraith to cry out in terrified agony as every new blow opened up more deep and fiery wounds, causing its body to slowly crumble to ash, bit, by tiny bit. Soon, all that remained of its dark, tortured form was a thin outline of black dust on the floor. The spear thanked the little metallic creature for its help, and then returned to the corner where it had been before as the metallic creature scurried up the wall and into the rafters above. The next morning the blacksmith returned, and was stunned to find the spear not only healed of all its wounds, and in perfect condition, but also fully assembled. He then noticed that the bag of magic powder was gone. He searched for it in vain for several minutes before eventually giving up. As he walked around the shop, trying to make sense of what he was seeing, he noticed a strange, black powder near the door. He scratched his head in confusion, and then simply shrugged it off. Maybe the powder in the bag had caused this. Who knew? At least the spear was now fixed. He then stoked his fire, grabbed a piece of raw metal, and began heating it in preparation for making a sword. And, as he did, the little metallic creature sat in the rafters above him and studied the blacksmith with intrigued interest. It then looked over at the spear in the corner, and winked, to which the spear winked in reply. The end.